I just got back from watching the live action How to Train Your Dragon and I have so much to say. I absolutely loved it, one of my favourite cinema experiences in years. I went in with so much hype and they absolutely delivered. It was predominantly a one-on-one remake, but since they added in so many extra things, it felt like fresh How to Train Your Dragon content. The first thing I want to mention is the dragons. They've all, except Toothless, had a major retexturing. The most notable one probably being the Red Death, which is awesome because I didn't really like the original. It just wasn't red enough. But look at it here. Monstrous Nightmares look a bit more like your generic dragon with a crocodile-like mouth and moves its tongue like a snake. It's just epic. I didn't pick up much on the Deadly Nada, but the Gronkle has changed a lot, being less bouldery and more of a big slug. These dragons also weren't very hostile, rather than in the original film. The Zippleback looked pretty much the same, just a lot more realistic. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the cast. This may have been their most lacking part, with the acting feeling like a theatre performance rather than a movie, paired with the lack of enthusiasm. Lines that were said in the original were delivered differently and a lot more casually. Naturally, it just felt off. Some lines were even gone entirely. Like when Hiccup is about to stab Toothless, he does his spiel about, "Oh, I'm gonna cut out your heart and take it to my father, I am a Viking." But in this scene he simply said nothing. I loved Fishlegs, played by Julian Dennison, my fellow New Zealander. He embodies the character amazingly. I was very impressed with his performance, except for the accent. It was incredibly forced, mixed with his own Kiwi accent, kinda mixing the two. It was just so noticeable, I couldn't help but pick up on it. Mason Thames was a great pick for Hiccup. Pretty much nailed the voice perfectly, and mostly had the looks as well. But he wasn't as sarcastic as Hiccup usually is, but still had his own unique spin on it. Astrid, probably the most controversial, played by Nico Parker. I don't know how to feel about this character. It's not really the looks, it's more she just didn't seem very Astrid-y to me. And she switches up so quickly after the ride with Toothless, which obviously happens in the original, but it felt so off in this movie because it almost seemed like she hadn't fully come around on that initial ride anyway, and then is all of a sudden saying, "I fully back you on this," which I think is just unnecessary dialogue. Don't even get me started on Ruffnut. What did they do to poor Ruffnut? They're not even twins. With that being said, they actually did play into this, even making a joke about how their parents can't tell them apart, which I can respect. They doubled down on it, and that's really the best thing you can do. Tough Nut was a little too over the top and nasty, I feel, and the twins seemed way older than the rest of the group, but apparently they had been held back a few years, which I suppose was a good save. Gobber had so many extra lines, you'd think he was the main character. Definitely one of the most important people in the film, though some of the things he said were kinda unnecessary, but at the same time we got to see more Gobble. What? We got to see more Gobber, an overall win. Another two noticeable characters were Snotlout and Gothy. Snotlout seemed a little too evil and depressed, seeming to have no humility for Snotlout at all. In the series, he still has this resentment towards Snotlout, but also seems a lot more boastful. Gothy thankfully remained mystical, but wasn't quite as old. I think her depiction was really good though. But why'd they move her house? She used to live like 800 meters up a skinny hill, which was hilarious. Why must you take this away from her? One thing I'll quickly mention, did anyone notice that the How to Train Your Dragon logo is made of Gronkle iron? Did anyone else catch that? I thought it was a nice touch. Anyways, a moment they added I believe was so important was Stoic putting his hand onto Toothless's nose to thank him for saving his son after the Battle of the Red Death. It was such a wholesome touch, get it? And really shows how Stoic comes around in the end. Brilliant. There was a crucial part of the film that was removed for no apparent reason. The scene after Toothless shoots a plasma blast in the air, right after their big successful ride, and it cuts to the two sitting down with terrible terrors. And this is where he finds out that dragons aren't fireproof. This scene sets up the ending very well for when Toothless shoots into the Red Death's mouth, so that was quite strange it not being there. The music they used was slightly different, but still made by John Powell, which is just fantastic. That's all I need. For me, the biggest thing I noticed that might not have even happened was that a sea shocker appeared. Yep. Did anyone else notice that, or was it just me? When the Vikings are navigating the waters trying to find the nest, right before they're swarmed by a horde of dragons, we can see spines poke through the water's surface. That's a damn sea shocker if I've ever seen one. Why the heck is that in this movie? That's a second movie dragon. It just doesn't really make sense. But as one of my favorite dragons, it was a really nice touch. A few lines I didn't like. When Snotlout was punching the Red Death's eyes out, Astrid says, "Yeah, you're the Viking," which was changed to, "Yeah, you're the top slayer," or something weird like that. It just didn't sit well with me. She was referring to their academy training they had been getting, which was a competition to be the top slayer. I don't know. My least favorite line was when Astrid said, "I won't snitch on you." Yeah, I doubt Vikings were using that kind of jargon. The famous scene in the animation when the glitch occurs and Toothless hesitates for a moment before connecting with Hiccup, they kept that in. And I'm so glad they did. Something Stoic mentioned was that they flew home to Burke on the dragons, which is something I don't think was ever mentioned in the original. I kinda assumed they boated back, but of course the Red Death burnt their entire fleet, so it's not really possible. Fortunately, the second movie has been confirmed at this point, so it would also make sense for them to do the third as well. Just something to be excited about. If there's anything I forgot to mention that you thought was interesting, let me know. And if you haven't seen the movie, definitely give it a watch, as it's an overall great cinema experience.